Dean Martin's daughter reveals the truth. For nearly 50 years, Dean Martin was a big name in entertainment. He was a fantastic singer and a hilarious comedian when he and Jerry Lewis teamed up. He also starred in many classic films and did an excellent job. Dean is known as a member of the Rat Pack, headed by Frank Sinatra. When Dean became part of the Rat Pack, he became more famous. You may think you know everything about the legendary entertainer, but you're about to learn some things you may never have known. He didn't speak English until he was 5. Dean Martin was born Dino Paul Crecchetti and grew up in a large Italian family. His father was an Italian immigrant, his mother was Italian-American, and the family spoke Italian at home. It wasn't until the entertainer was 5 that he learned to speak English. Dean struggled in school while trying to learn English and had trouble making friends because of the language barrier. He was a boxer. When Dean was 15 years old, he started welterweight boxing under the name Kid Crochet. Dean could hold his own in amateur bouts and often joked about winning 11 professional fights. Amateur boxing didn't pay much, and Dean often didn't have the money to buy tape for his knuckles, resulting in many injuries. His injuries included a broken nose, broken knuckles, a scarred lip, and bruises all over his body. Fortunately, Dean had his nose straightened out, which helped his singing career. Dean's nose job. Dean had a nose job when he was 27, but people weren't sure if he had it fixed due to the broken nose he sustained boxing or if he didn't like his nose. The singer had it fixed right before his career began to take off, and it didn't look much different than it did before the surgery. The plastic surgeon kept the shape of his nose and made it a bit narrower. Dean didn't pay for the surgery, and film comedian Lou Costello paid for it. Name changes. When Dean gave up boxing, he started working as a roulette stickman at an illegal casino behind a tobacco shop. While working at the casino, Dean began singing with local bands, going by the name Dino Martini after the Metropolitan Opera singer Nino Martini. In 1940, bandleader Sammy Watkins suggested that he change his name to Dean Martin to avoid being confused with the opera singer. He didn't know at the time that Dean would become just as famous as the opera singer. He loved comic books. Dean Martin read just one book his entire life, Black Beauty. Although the singer didn't enjoy novels, he loved comic books. He was too embarrassed to buy comic books, so he had his friend Jerry Lewis buy them for him. Ironically, Dean's life had been the subject of various novels, biographies, and memoirs. Maybe someday someone will create a comic book about the Rat Pack. Dean had his own comic. In 1952, DC Comics made Dean's dream come true when they released the first issue of The Adventures of Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis. The comic series ran for 5 years and 40 issues were published. When the comedy team of Dean and Jerry split, DC renamed the series The Adventures of Jerry Lewis in 1957. The series continued under the new title, published issues 41 to 124 and only focused on Jerry. The series featured guest stars including Lex Luthor, Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, The Flash, and Bob Hope. He has 3 stars on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. The Hollywood Walk of Fame spans 15 blocks of Hollywood Boulevard and 3 blocks of Vine Street in Hollywood. 2,600 stars along the sidewalk are dedicated to actors, musicians, musical and theater groups, directors, producers, and even fictional characters that were beloved in the entertainment industry. 3 of the stars belong to Dean Martin, which is rare because most people only got 1. Dean had a star for television and has an emblem of a classic film camera. The star for television has an emblem of an old TV with rabbit ears, and the star for singing has a phonographic record. Dean was friends with Jimmy the Greek Snyder as a kid. Jimmy the Greek Snyder was a famous Vegas bookie, sports commentator, and Dean Martin's childhood friend. The two grew up in Steubenville, Ohio, and were introduced to the underworld of gambling when they were very young. Dean later worked in one and moved up to singing in the lounge. Jimmy made a fortune betting on the election in 1948 and won with 17-1 odds. He used the money to invest in oil and coal mining and eventually moved to Vegas. The lifelong friends reunited when they starred in the 1981 movie Cannonball Run. Dean and Frank Sinatra's first meeting. Dean performed with several bands in the 40s and was trying to develop his own onstage personality and style. In 1943, he landed a gig as the opening act at the Rio Bamba nightclub in New York City. The club was struggling financially, so they couldn't afford to hire big-name singers and went with singers who wouldn't expect a significant payout. The headliner was Frank Sinatra, who'd been selling out the club, and it's where he met Dean. According to all accounts, Dean's performance didn't go very well that night. Dean had a famous family. Famous people always surrounded Dean Martin, and his family was also renowned. His daughter Gina married Carl Wilson of the Beach Boys, and the couple remained married until Carl died in 1998. Dean's son Paul married actress Olivia Hussey, and the pair divorced in 1978. His second wife was Olympic figure skater Dorothy Hamill, and the marriage ended in 1984. Finally, his son Craig married Carol Costello, the daughter of Lou Costello. Dean and Jerry bombed their first performance. Dean and Jerry met while performing at the Glass Hat nightclub in New York City and became fast friends. They decided to do a show together and debuted on July 24, 1946, at the 500 Club in Atlantic City, where they bombed. The performance was so bad that the club's owner, Skinny Diamato, told them that they'd be fired if they didn't come up with something better for the second act. The men regrouped, and the second show was divided between Dean singing and the two doing ad-libbed material and skits, and the second act was much better than the first. The Toast of the Town. Dean and Jerry made their TV debut on the Toast of the Town, later known as The Ed Sullivan Show, on July 20, 1948. The pair's time on screen led them to hire Ed Simmons and Norman Lear to help write their comedy bits. When the duo decided it was time to leave the clubs and focus on TV and radio, they landed a radio series and contract with Paramount. The men knew exactly what they wanted, and they went after it. Dean had kidney problems. Dean went on tour with Rat Pack members Frank Sinatra and Sammy Davis Jr. in 1987. The tour was called Together Again, and it was the first time Dean had performed in front of a crowd in a long time, and he was worried about singing in a sold-out stadium. The tour had 17 shows, but Dean only performed in 5. He began having kidney problems while on the road and had to quit early. Most people believed he had kidney problems, but some believe he made it up to get out of performing for the rest of the tour. His daughter made a startling confession about her father's bad boy behavior. Dean Martin's daughter reveals the truth about her father and his so-called bad boy behavior. Dean and the Rat Pack drank heavily, and his daughter claimed that it was apple juice when he had a drink in his hand on stage hanging out with friends. Dean was a good actor, so it was easy for him to act drunk and silly with his friends, and people believed it, calling him a bad boy. The Dean Martin Committee. When Dean died in 1995, the city council of his hometown, Steubenville, Ohio, formed the Dean Martin Committee. The group is chaired by the late entertainer's daughter, Deanna, and her husband, John Griffith, and they do a lot of good. The committee started a walking guide tour to all of Dean's favorite spots and have fundraisers for the Dean Martin Scholarship. The committee also organizes the annual Dean Martin Festival with concerts, karaoke, and Dean Martin impersonators. Because Dean Martin was Italian, they serve Italian food at the festival and have a meatball eating contest. The Rat Pack had different names. Dean was a member of the Rat Pack along with Sammy Davis Jr., Frank Sinatra, Joey Bishop, and Peter Lawford. The close-knit group of friends were entertainers in the Las Vegas casinos, but the name of the group originated in New York City and referred to a different group of men. According to the story, Lauren Bacall told her husband, Humphrey Bogart, and his friends looked like a Rat Pack after a night out in Vegas. The name stuck, and the group referred to themselves as the Clan or the Summit. The Rat Pack supported each other. When a member of the Rat Pack had a performance, the rest of the group would attend, the way a good friend would. They did this so often that people expected one or more members to end up on stage by the night's end. When Dean performed in Vegas, the marquee read Dean Martin, maybe Frank, maybe Sammy. The group was best friends on and off stage. Elvis loved Dean. Dean Martin's self-assurance and charisma earned him the nickname the King of Cool, and his daughter Deanna remembers the first time she heard it because it came from the King of Rock and Roll. According to Deanna, Elvis idolized her father and told her that her father was the king of cool when the two met for the first time. She couldn't believe a huge star like Elvis thought her dad was cool. Beating the Beatles. Dean's daughter, Deanna, remembers a call from her father where he told her that she and her sisters had to see a band. He didn't know who they were, but he was sure his children would love them. The band turned out to be the Beatles, and their songs were all over the Billboard Top 100, and nobody came close to knocking them down a peg until Dean recorded Everyone Loves Somebody. The song knocked the Beatles song A Hard Day's Night out of first place, something even Elvis and Frank Sinatra couldn't do. When his song hit number 1, Dean sent a telegram to Elvis and one to Frank, and all it said was, "I did it." He was claustrophobic. Many people don't know about Dean's personal life unless it was highly publicized. One thing that wasn't in the papers and magazines was that Dean was very claustrophobic. When he stayed in hotels, he booked rooms on the lowest floors to take the stairs rather than the elevator, which he called coffins. Once he hiked up 18 flights of stairs because he couldn't get into an elevator. Dean didn't know what he was doing, but it worked. Deanna Martin knew she wanted to be a performer after seeing her father on stage for the first time. She loved his voice and that he could make people laugh and wanted to learn from the best. This led her to ask Frank Sinatra to teach her how to sing. The legendary singer told Dean's daughter that he pushed from his diaphragm and could tell before the note came out if it would be on pitch. Deanna asked Frank if that's how her father did it, and he said no. Frank told Deanna that Dean had no idea what he was doing and he just did it. 10,000 bedrooms. Dean's first movie was the 1957 flop, 10,000 Bedrooms. He played Ray Hunter, a hotel mogul who flies to Rome to buy another property, and it didn't do well at the box office. According to MGM, the movie grossed $955,000 in the United States and $750,000 in Canada, with a loss of $1.19 million. One critic said the movie deserved a place in history as Dean Martin's first solo effort without Jerry Lewis, and it almost destroyed his career.